Have you ever made something you were just incredibly proud of? In a workshop, or maybe in your kitchen, or even just on your computer? Okay, now imagine making 1,000 of them, or 1,000,000. That journey from a personal project to a global product is exactly what we're diving into today.
Right, so this is the big question, isn't it? It's the one every inventor, every designer, every creator eventually faces. You spent all this time perfecting this one amazing thing, but how in the world do you take that same passion, that same quality, and scale it up for everyone? Well, the answer is a fascinating mix of art, business, and you guessed it, a lot of teamwork.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to look at 5 key ideas. We'll kick things off by comparing a personal project to a full-blown factory. Then we'll get into a story about passion and price. We'll see why design is absolutely a team sport, cover the #1 rule of making anything, and finally, figure out how to handle any potential dangers. Let's jump in. All right, first up, let's talk about the 2 completely different universes of production. You've got your one-off project on one side and mass manufacturing on the other. This slide really just lays it all out, doesn't it? Think about a student in a workshop pouring their heart into one single, gorgeous piece of woodwork. Their scale is 1. It's all manual. The goal is pure, unique craftsmanship. Now, flip that coin. You've got industrial production. We're talking thousands of units, automation with things like CNC, computer-controlled machines and laser cutters. And here, the goal is totally different. It's all about economy and speed.
In this quote from a student, man, you can just feel it. You can feel the hours, the focus, the sheer dedication it takes to get one single component absolutely perfect. It really is a labor of love. But here comes the reality check. In the exact same time it took that student to lovingly craft that one perfect piece, a computerized lathe could spit out thousands of them, every single one identical. That just shows you the mind-blowing difference in scale and efficiency we're talking about.
So look, the bottom line is this. It's not about which one is better. A handmade object can have a soul that a mass-produced one might not. But if your goal is to get your awesome idea into the hands of thousands of people, you have to embrace industrial methods. It's all about picking the right process for what you're trying to achieve.
So, how does this whole tug-of-war between craft and scale actually play out in the real world? Well, for a seriously powerful example, we've got to talk about the legendary Italian motorcycle company, Bimota. It's a bit of a cautionary tale. For years, Bimota was just the peak. The absolute pinnacle of motorcycle design. They were famous for their wild engineering, their incredible chassis, and most of all, for their obsessive, handcrafted attention to detail. These things weren't just bikes, they were rolling works of art.
I mean, this quote says everything. Just let that sink in. One mechanic built your entire motorcycle, from the first bolt to the final polish. The whole company ran on pure passion. There's even a story about a customer's parents visiting the factory and meeting the actual guy who was building their son's bike. You just can't get more personal than that.
So you've got this brilliant design, this unmatched reputation, and just overwhelming passion. Sounds like a surefire recipe for success, right? So what happened?
Well, the dream eventually just hit a brick wall. A whole storm of things started to close in. The global market shifted, new safety and environmental rules came in that required a ton of money to meet, and their R&D budget just couldn't keep up. On top of that, cheaper, mass-produced bikes from rivals started looking a lot more appealing, especially after the financial crisis made everyone rethink how they spent their money.
And that's the tough lesson from the Bimota story. Passion and beautiful craftsmanship are absolutely essential, but they have to exist in the real world. To survive, they have to be able to adapt to new tech, new rules, and the cold, hard financial realities of the market. At the end of the day, even art needs a business plan.
And speaking of a business plan, that brings us perfectly to our next point, collaboration. Here's the truth. No successful product is ever the work of just one person. In the real world, design is a team sport. Period.
Just picture a big clothing company that wants to launch a new line of beachwear. It's not one designer sitting in a room, no way. You've got graphic designers working on the patterns, product specialists figuring out the cut and fit, a production team organizing the manufacturing, a marketing team creating the ads, and a sales team getting it all into stores. It is a massive, coordinated dance.
And that's where the magic happens. This collaboration is a huge strength. When you get all these different skills and viewpoints in the same room, designers, engineers, marketers, the ideas start bouncing off each other, and you almost always end up with a much, much better product.
Okay, this next part is completely non-negotiable. It doesn't matter if you're making one thing or 1 million of them, there is a golden rule. Safety comes first. And it's not some box you check off at the end, it's the absolute foundation of responsible design.
And safety isn't just one simple thing. You have to look at it from all these different angles. There's your ethical and moral duty, there are the hard legal requirements you have to meet, there's the environmental impact, safety for the people actually making the product, and yeah, even safety for how it's going to be disposed of someday. It's the whole life cycle.
The takeaway here is huge. As the designer, you are on the hook for that product's safety through its entire life. From that very first sketch on a napkin all the way to the day it ends up in a landfill. That responsibility is yours.
So how do you actually handle all that responsibility? Let's get practical. The good news is you don't have to guess. There are proven, systematic ways to find risks and get them under control.
It all starts with something called a risk assessment. Now, it might sound complicated, but it's actually super logical. All you do is look at anything that could possibly go wrong and ask 2 simple questions. First, how bad would it be if this happened? And second, what are the odds of it actually happening? And this is how you turn those answers into an action plan. This is a risk assessment matrix. You just find where your hazard fits. So for example, something that could cause a serious injury and is very likely to happen, that gets a priority of 1. You have to deal with that immediately. But something that might just need a Band-Aid and is very unlikely to happen, that's a 6, a much lower priority. It's a really simple way to focus your energy where it matters most.
Okay, so once you know what the risk is, you use this, the hierarchy of controls. It's like a ladder, and you always start at the top, because that's the most effective fix. Can you just completely get rid of the risk? Eliminate it? If not, can you substitute it for something safer? No? Can you isolate it? And you work your way down the list. Using things like goggles or gloves, what we call PPE, is actually your very last line of defense, because it's the least effective way to control a real hazard. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. Just look around you for a second. Pick up the closest object to you. Could be your phone, a coffee mug, a pen, whatever. It might seem simple, but I guarantee you, hidden inside it is an incredible story. It's a story of an idea that traveled from a single prototype to a massive factory, a story of countless teams working together, and a quiet history of risks that were carefully identified and controlled, all so that it could safely end up right there in your hand. What's its story?